Hey, it's your boy Hendo checking in though, coming to y'all with another video. Today I want to talk about African American history before colonization. If we're talking about African American history before colonization, there's a lot of different theories that we have to bring in, like the Moorish theory, the out of Africa theory, the Black indigenous theory, the um, Jewish, what is it called? The Israelite Jew theory. Now, all four of those are things that Black Americans believe. None of them that we believe in more. I think we're all still so confused about where we come from that we're trying to understand it. And also, I want you guys to understand that just because just because I'm speaking on them like they're all separate things, they all can be true at the same time. You know what I mean? If you place them in different spots in our history, they can all be true at different. They can all be true at the same time. You know what I mean? So I just wanted to bring this up so to open up discussions for Black Americans to start having not only with people online or in the comment section, but I also want you to start having these discussions with the people that you're around, that you surround yourself with. Start planting these seeds in their head because I think it's important to know where you come from to know where you're going. And I think with what's coming next in this country, we can pretty much see the writing on the wall. We need to know where we're going. And we can't all get collectively together until we can all understand our history. I feel like we can't move forward until we can understand the past. And we don't want to move forward without understanding the past because then we're doomed to repeat and make the same mistakes that we made before. And I think that's what they want to do. They want to divide us. They want to keep us in fear. They want us fear mongering each other online, saying that all this stuff is happening, which it is happening. But I think we need to collectively get together and start working on us. One thing that I like to say is that when we look at white supremacy and we look at the Republicans, because that is the party of white supremacy, when we look at something like that, we start to see that the stereotypes that they place on black people, yes, they're wrong because they're generalizing all black people and trying to turn them into the stereotype. But we have to admit that some of these things are problems in our community and we have to start addressing them. And I think that's what our time is now for all this downtime that we have because we're not protesting, we're not out in the streets. I'm not saying that we should be. I'm just saying that while we're spending this time down, we need to be focusing on us as African American people. Stop letting people fearmonger you. Stop falling for the trap. I don't want to hold you too long. Let's get into the video.
You the idiot that damn near ran me over, aren't you? Wait till I find your boss. He gonna fire your metallic ass.
You would do well to mind your tongue more.
Woo! You got to have major coins behind this. Who's backing you? Buffy?
Silence more. I'm interested in learning more about your culture. It is my understanding that the Normans are excellent dancers.
If you want to know more about my culture, remove the dog from the table. Can't
Stand the game more.
more. Well, I prefer lordship.
Now the Moor's a swordsman.
Yo, I just want to say that that's crazy. I've seen that movie as a kid, Black Knight, and I never realized like they were calling him a Moor. Like even thinking back, I can't. Even when I heard it as a kid, I probably was like, "What does that even mean?" It's crazy that they're putting things in movies like that, trying to get you to go look at it. That's crazy. But they say a lot of things are hidden in movies, so
All right, human onions, let's talk about the kings and queens you don't want us to know about. The Moors. The Moors were the original people of Europe and North Africa, also the birthplace of the Caucasus Mountain people. which explains who created them and why they hide them. Anyway, the Moors were warriors, scholars, architects, and rulers. And if I didn't mention it already, they were melanated people. They ruled what we know as Spain for nearly 800 years, bringing advancements in science, medicine, astronomy, and libraries and universities, while much of Europe was in the Dark Ages. This is documented Eurocentric history. They just don't teach it like this to anyone in this country. The Moors were sophisticated and very powerful, and yes, many were undeniably black. A pride that no cave dweller could ever disrupt. A pride that you see within Black Americans today. And let's be clear, Black people didn't just arrive in the Americas via slavery. There's evidence from Olmec heads to oral histories that suggests that melanated presence was here long before Columbus or any other made-up unicorn. Black Americans are indigenous to this land. Black people have always been here, and they've been here before anyone else. Their history is global, profound, and deliberately erased. You're learning about the history of Europe as a volunteer service from a fellow human. Your country doesn't respect you enough to tell you the truth. They'd rather chuckle at your ignorance and self-deprecating envy disguised as racism than to tell you the truth about where the hell you come from. Black Americans know their history because they created it. Settlers have no idea where they're from because their ancestry begins at a boat. So the next time you try to tell Black Americans that their history starts with slavery, the history of the Moors stops that propaganda right in its tracks. That's why it's a deliberate effort to ensure that you know little to no history about them. That whole "we was Kangs" thing that you do isn't a joke or made up. It's actually true. Black people were the original royalty. The entire British monarchy is just a cosplay of the Moors. Absolutely nothing that you see was originated by hands covered in liver spots. Colonizers have never created nothing more than a problem. But all problems do eventually get solved.
I just want to say shout out to that creator because I've seen multiple videos of his where he's calling out the hypocrisy in the white community and talking about true Black history. And I don't know, like I've just seen it on passing on YouTube videos where like the same as these where they stitch in a bunch of people. And so I just want to shout him out, go check him out. I haven't seen his page. I might have to go look it up because that's facts. He's spitting facts. And one more thing. Do you think that's why white supremacy is so heavy? Because we ruled over them first? And I tried to look it up. And look at how the Moors like ruled over Spain for 800 years. But they said it was kind of like peace. It was the most peaceful time. They brought in the golden age and the renaissance of Europe. And also they it was fair for every religious group. It was basically like America where you can be any religion and live there. You know what I mean? So it wasn't just a Christian country. It was Muslims, Jewish, Catholic, all different type of people there living in harmony. That's what I heard. So, but maybe it was just being ruled over by a different race that they felt so horribly about. So they created this whole white supremacy thing to try to whitewash history. Which makes sense. I mean, if everything was created by another race, then it kind of makes sense to me. But let's keep going.
But we got to ask a question now, Gene. Why would all these federally recognized tribes come to St. Tammany and organize a fake tribe? That's a serious question I want you to help me find out. And I'm asking you in here.
I'm not familiar with it. I'll be honest with you.
I'm not either. But not to that point. But we got to find out what happened. Am I right about that, Joe?
Yes. Don't know anything about it. I don't know anything about it.
Well, I knew Tom knew it because they invited him to take a picture. Yeah. He was in the picture with them when they actually first organized this thing. And they had their little flag and they put it in the paper. So I know he know that much. He may not know the whole story. Y'all get what I'm saying? Right. He might know in part.
No, I just told him I'm from Cherokee heritage. I'm not Choctaw, but since this area was Choctaw, I want to learn about it. I didn't know anything about it.
But what I don't understand, if these tribes came here, are they something?
Now, what tribes are you referring to?
The ones you talked about with Gina and Gina said they
Gina, yeah.
Why they didn't contact the real tribe?
They didn't know about you. That's why I'm telling you, you're not doing the job good enough.
They know about me. I sit on boards. I was on the state boards and different stuff. They know about me.
Well, why didn't they
I'm the wrong
contact you
color.
then?
How many Indians y'all see look like this? How many Indians you see running around the United States looking like this? Right now. And that's the truth. And that's what need to come out. Indians that look like me and my family, nobody know about us. Why? You cannot go in the archives. I know you've done it. You can't go in the archives without getting the Indian dog. Am I right about that?
That's right, yeah.
So what happened to them? So did America kill all of us, hide all of us? What is the story? How we lived it like this, and now, why in the Cowboys did the white man made, they say pale face? If a white man called another white man pale face, he's stupid. That pale face called him pale face? That means there was a difference in complexion. Why does the treaty say red man? Not pink, red. White folks get pink. We have red pigments in our skin. Brown is considered like the penny. You know, and I don't care about one red penny. Y'all remember that old saying people used to say? What color is a penny? Copper colored. And the copper changes based on the elements that it's in. It can be darker, but it's still copper. Y'all understand what I'm saying? And even the lightest of copper is still not going to give you white. We can talk about, you say you Cherokee. I got a little Cherokee in me too. That's one of my parts of my blood. What I don't understand, John Ross and them look like they came straight from off a Europe ship.
But see, my people were ashamed of it. They wouldn't admit it.
But every white person got Indian heritage now. And if a person of color say they're Indian, they want to tell us we fake and go back to Africa. I don't know about no Africa. I know about these grounds. And that's the history have to be corrected in the school system throughout America, because the same elected officials are in office learned this lie that the teacher told. I read the book, the lie my teacher told me. You read that book? You need to get that book. The lies my teacher told me. Well, the lies the teacher done told the students then took that into legislative office, and they making laws based off lies that their teacher told them. They need to go down to archives. Am I correct on that? They go in the archive, they'll find some real history. It's there. They just too lazy to go get it. Or they don't know, as you just said, what to go get. You know, if you research, and it's going to lead you from one thing to the next. And I think I want elected officials to do some research on the places that they want to represent.
Like she said, do your research and you'll know. You see how he was sitting there like he knew the truth, but he was like, "Damn, I shouldn't even came here. She cooking me right now." Like, damn, like yeah. And he was basically like, "Yeah, I know we not Indians for real, but hey, my family said they were." He know the truth, bro. It shit just sick how they be trying to get over, but it is what it is.
Listen, if you have not questioned the slavery narrative before now, then I think you should after this video. I ran across an entire set of encyclopedias from 1968, the New Standard Encyclopedia, Volume 12. When I tell you I was not ready for what I was about to read inside of this encyclopedia, the S book, baby, I was not. So you guys, I quickly flipped over to the word slavery because I was so anxious to know what exactly were they teaching in regards to American slavery during this period of time. And lo and behold, check this out. Let's go down to the second paragraph under American slavery, because this is where it gets quite interesting. And here's what it says. In colonial America, slavery existed in the North and the South, but it was in the introduction of a large-scale cotton farming in the South that made slavery appear to be profitable after the Revolution. Now, here's a quick look at the Revolutionary War timeline. The war started in 1775. The U.S. declared its independence in 1776, and the end of the war wasn't until 1783. So the introduction of a large-scale cotton farming wasn't until after the Revolution, which was in 1783. So let's crunch the numbers real quick. So the importation of slaves were banned in 1808, and then the end of the Revolutionary War was 1783. So that actually gives us only about 25 years of slavery, as they talk. Hold on, don't leave yet, because it gets even better. Now let's continue reading after the word revolution. This is crazy because it says only a small minority of Southern whites held slaves, and most of them owned only one or two. Let me read that one more time. It says only a small minority of Southern whites held slaves, and most of them only owned one or two. Now, where have you heard that in our traditional history in regards to ownership of slaves in the South?
And
I saw white men.
what did you say?
I said, I saw white men.
What if I told you our true history is hidden in books that are hundreds of years old? If you want the real history of the indigenous tribes of the Americas and the process of colonialism, you have to invest in expensive books, some of which you can't even buy in the US. Exhibit A, A Popular History of the United States from the Aboriginal Times to Present Day, written in 1876. This book cost me $180. Let's take a look. In this book, you can find a map of the United States with the different territories marking the tribes of those areas. Here we have a description of the phenotype of the American Indians. Eyes jet black and sunken, hair black and straight, beard black and scant, skin copper colored and reddish black. Again, I say copper colored and reddish black. I don't have to tell you what color copper is, do I? And we also have a clear timeline of the colonization of the Americas from the 1100s to the 1600s and all the different European factions that worked to subjugate our ancestors. Exhibit B, and this one is a real gem. Diasporas within a diaspora. Jews, crypto-Jews, and the world of maritime empires from 1540 to 1740. This book was over $300 and I had to import it from the United Kingdom. It's written by a Jewish Ivy League professor and he tells the truth of the secret Jewish involvement in the colonization of the Americas. Let's take a look. Western Sephardic Jewry fulfilled a highly distinctive and perhaps unique set of functions throughout the maritime, commercial, and colonial expansion of Europe from 1492 down to the late 18th century. This was especially true in the case of the mid and southern Atlantic, the Caribbean, and in Western Europe's relations with the Islamic North Africa and the Near East. Over large expanses of the globe, Sephardic Jews and the crypto-Jews of Iberian background associated with them contributed conspicuously and in fundamental ways to the growing dominance over international trade, shipping, and finance of the leading commercial centers of the West, and hence also of the six great seaborne empires of the age, the Venetian, Portuguese, Spanish, Dutch, English, and French. Come on, y'all. Spanish, Portuguese, English, Dutch, French. All of the European empires that colonized our ancestral homeland. And guess what? You may have thought that this faction was Dutch or that this faction was Spanish, but secretly among the ranks are crypto-Jews. But let's keep reading. In chapter 12, it says, Gershom Scholem attributed a fundamental role in the shaping of Jewish mysticism and spirituality to the psychological and cultural impact of political and social upheavals affecting the Jews. In particular, he identified the expulsion from Spain in 1492. Come on, y'all. The expulsion from Spain in 1492, that date should have some significance to you. 1492, that's the same year Christopher Columbus set sail for the New World. So you're telling me coincidentally, the same time that Christopher Columbus is sailing to the Americas is the same time that the Jews are getting kicked out of Spain. And if you know, you know, his name was never Christopher Columbus. That's his angelicized, a British name. His real name was Cristobal Colon, and he was also a Sephardic crypto-Jew. If you want to see a full list of banned, forgotten, and suppressed books about our indigenous heritage, go to nativeblack.ancestry.com and check out my curated book list.
Yeah, I want to let y'all know that that is true because I have a cousin. His name is Miko Ink, on TikTok. He was the first one in my family that I ever heard talking about the indigenous theory, and that's because he was going back through the Dawes Rolls and everything. He was going back through our family history and seeing that we were Native American before we were ever classified as black. And he was telling me about it, and I was like, at first I was just writing him off like, all right, dude, yeah. Because, you know, as black people in America, with our history being stolen, we tend to search for an identity that pleases us, even if it has no shred of truth to it. Like, I've even heard black people say, we're the true Vikings. Like, and I'm not saying that couldn't be true, but I'm saying do your research. Don't just hear something and it sounds good and it makes you feel good inside, so you go along with it. But long story short, my cousin was telling me about what's it called? He was telling me about how we were classified as Native Americans. He was like, I, I have pictures of this book. And I'm like, where's the book? Because it was a book that spoke on the treaties and acts that happened and who it was for and what really happened. And so we look up the book because he only had pictures of certain pages of the book. So we look up the book, $2,000 for a book that was like 100 and something pages. Like, are you out your mind? But that's when I really started to realize, oh, there's something to this, because why are they putting this price tag on this book? You know what I mean? Like, it only makes sense that they first off, if you want to hide something, hide it in a book, especially nowadays. But make that book super expensive and it becomes not worth it. Why would I pay $2,000 for some papers? But if you pay that $2,000, you'll know the truth. And so what he's saying about the books, I believe is true. But let's keep going.
Can they teach you the history of slavery? Why? Ask the bloody question. Why are they only teaching you the history of slavery as far back as the 16th and the 17th century? Why are they only going that far back? They don't want you to go farther back than that, because then you'll actually find out the truth. But from the 16th and 17th century, we'll teach you about slavery. You've got to go further back. And you've got to understand and question, why do they do this throughout the whole of America, in all the public schools? Why do they only go back as far as the 16th and the 17th century to talk about slavery? We've got to go further back than that. Because Islam designed infernal slavery. And then the Ashkenazi Khazars, those who say they are Jews and are not, are the ones that marketed it, and the regal Negro nomads exiled from the kingdom of Judah were the main recipients of it at the hands of the indigenous black Africans. Because you've got to understand, the regal class of the house of Judah came down from Israel, and they came into the land of the black Africans. And the black Africans resented the regal class of the house of Judah in their land, because they had laws, they had customs, they had civility, and they were a regal class of Negro that came down into Africa. And later on, it was the Ashkenazi, the Islamic slave traders as well, that then worked together with the indigenous black Africans to enslave the regal house of Judah.
Hello, America, and welcome to another Founders Friday on the Glenn Beck program. Somebody asked me just before we went on the air how these shows are being rated, and I have to tell you, we didn't think anybody would watch. We thought, we'll give this a whirl, see if everybody wants to watch it. They're wildly highly rated, and I thank you for watching. There is a hunger in America for the truth, and tonight, I think we're going to blow your mind. You're going to have to ask yourself a couple of questions by the end of the program. Why would our schools leave all of this history out? I mean, this is some of the greatest American story that you've ever heard. Why would they do that? And it's everywhere. You just don't know where to look. If you take a look at the revolutionary paintings of revolutionary times, here it is. This is the Boston Tea Party, a bunch of white guys, and these people strangely looking like Indians, and they're not. But that's it. Not a lot of racial diversity. If you watch movies, one great movie. This is John Adams. You watch John Adams, and you don't see a lot of racial diversity. I'm currently watching Johnny Tremaine. This is I love this movie. I remember this growing up. I was watching it with my kids just last night, and I noticed there are a couple of American Indians, but you don't see any African Americans unless they're slaves. They will show people as slaves, but that's it. Now, I want to show you a painting of the Battle of Bunker Hill. Here's the Battle of Bunker Hill. Bunch of white guys, right? Unless you know where to look. Right here. That's Peter Salem. He was actually the hero of the battle. It doesn't look like he's a hero there. He looks like he's cowering behind the white guy with a sword. He was the hero of the battle, and he saved scores of American lives that day. Why don't we know this? Look at the picture of the Battle of Lexington. 150 Americans. There it is. Do you see any faces of color in this painting? They were all members of the Reverend Jonas Clark's church. They went out. They were actually, if I'm not mistaken, David, they were in church at the time, right?
He called them together at church,
okay,
yes.
So we called together at church and then said, let's go. And they went to defend their town. When the shot heard around the world was over that day, there were 18 Americans lying on the ground. What you don't see in this painting are the equal numbers of whites and blacks. They were white and black patriots. It was a mixed church. Did you even know that happened? One of those injured patriots on the ground in this painting was a black man named Prince Estabrook. I bet you never heard of Prince Estabrook before. How about the painting of George Washington crossing the Delaware? Bunch of white guys, right? No. Look here. African American, helping row the boat across. You know what his name was? Prince Whipple. He fought alongside Washington during the Revolution. Take a look at this one. This painting of, this is the Marquis de Lafayette. If you look at this, you just think, oh yeah, and then he made his slave dress up like I don't know what. But that's what you would think, right? This guy is incredibly important. This guy may have won the Revolutionary War. James Armistead was his name. How did he win the Revolutionary War? Double spy. I'm going to let David tell the story here in a minute, but basically the Brits thought that he was spying for them, but he was spying for General Washington. He'd give the Brits bad intel and reveal the good critical information to General Washington. Did you know this story? Why? I'm so tired of people saying, well, it was just the white people, white people, white people. No, no. Why are we intentionally leaving others out? There are black founders. Let me ask the audience. How many of you can name one person of these pictures? Only one. How many can name only one? Most people, right? Am I mistaken saying it's Frederick Douglass? Okay. How many can name two of the people here? We've got 6, 8 people. How many can name 3? 4. How many can name 4? 1. And that's David Barton's wife. David, come on up. This is our good friend David Barton. He is the founder and president of Wall Builders, also author of Setting the Record Straight, American History in Black and White. Come on up and sit here. We also have Lucas Morell. Lucas is a professor at Washington and Lee University in Virginia. Welcome. And he is also the author of Lincoln's Sacred Effort. Okay, David, where do we start? Maybe we should start with
James Armistead.
Yeah,
it's a great one, because James Armistead, after the Battle of Richmond, he's in Virginia, and a lot of the battles did not happen in Virginia. But after the siege of Richmond, he's there. He sees what the British have done in his home state, and he goes to enlist. He said, I want to help. And he really, I don't know why, but he liked Lafayette. He went to Lafayette, the young French.
First off, I want to say I was not trying to block that beautiful sister's face at the bottom. You know, I just wanted y'all to be able to see what's at the top. So if you ever see me blocking somebody's face, it's not on purpose. It's just so you can see the video. Second off, I want to say it's crazy how. That's why I applaud some white people, and we need to have some of them as allies. I know a lot of black people get angry when they hear that, or they think like they're all the same, but I want you to understand that we need some as allies, because we need some of them. Some of their people, majority of their people will never hear it coming out of our mouth and respect it, which we don't need them to respect it. It is what it is. But I applaud the ones who tell the truth, and so should you, because that is a big help to us, and we all need allies.
April 1st, they don't talk about it, but what happened on April 1st, according to tradition in Spain, is that they told all the Moors, they said, you can, we've kicked out the Jews, and you're friends of the Jews, you can go. We've got ships waiting for you, you can go back to Morocco. You've lost the war in Spain, but we'll let you go. And so they said, we don't believe you. Well, so they saw there were ships waiting for them. So they left. And while they left, in between going to their ships, they burned their houses and burned the ships. So they were homeless. This was on April 1st, 1492. This becomes April Fool's Day. You've been fooled. This is a denigration of the Moors, which is by the Catholic Church. And there was a siege of Granada where they built the town of Santa Fe. Isabella burned down their little huts. They were just doing a stakeout on Granada, because Granada was landlocked, or so to speak, the mountain. They just waited to starve them out. And they built a little town, burned down. So they built a new town made of stones and had a cross, and it was called Santa Fe. And there was the capitulation of Santa Fe, where a treaty was signed. And I haven't seen this treaty, but apparently I'm told it was a capitulation. It was not, the Moors allowed, I can't prove this, but according to my friend Elias Fay, they allowed the Catholic Church or the Spanish government, and Noble Drew Ali was sent on a mission back to America, where he was from, to teach the Moorish people their true heritage. And he taught that that there were Moors in America before there were what we know as Native American Indians, and that this history has been obscured and robbed. And it's not only robbed the so-called black people, it's robbed the white people. It's robbed everybody, because the knowledge is what's lost, you know? And it's almost, you have humanity enslaving its best, you know, taking the best part of itself and cutting it off, you know? If the roles were reversed, they might have done the same thing. You know what I'm saying? It's just like the human condition is such that let's choke off the knowledge. But anyway, that's what happened. And Noble Drew Ali lived in the 1900s and the 20s, and he became very popular. He was very charismatic, very gifted. And Elihu Pleasant Bay wrote this book, Noble Drew Ali. He spent a great deal of his life. He knew one of Noble Drew Ali's wives. He had more than one wife. And he was very popular in the 20s. And he was so popular, he became quite a problem to the government. When he was young, he lived with an aunt who was beat him. He had paranormal abilities. At a young age, he supposedly became a merchant seaman or stowed away and went to Egypt. When he went to Egypt, he ended up amongst a group of masters who recognized him. They saw him and were waiting for him. So they initiated him into the Great Pyramid. They took him into the pyramid blindfolded and said, work your way out.
Growing up, the Looney Tunes was one of my favorite cartoons. So I was watching a lot this weekend, and of course we were discussing the Moors, and it reminded me of one of these old Bugs Bunny cartoons I used to watch. Did you catch it? Now I got a freeze frame for you. For rent or lease, call Morocco. In this episode called Sahara Hair, Bugs Bunny ended up in the Sahara Desert when he was trying to get to Miami Beach, which I also found particularly funny because how you missed that. Miami Beach at last! Yippee! Hooray! And it didn't click, you know, until I was older.
So this is the big pond. Big deal. I always pictured the Atlantic Ocean as so much bigger.
But this is obviously just my thinking because, you know, Bugs Bunny is supposed to be originally from New York based upon his accent. And he should have gone south instead of going east. But if we take a look-see, he actually swam pretty close, went straight across to the Sahara Desert instead of going straight down to Miami. For renting or leasing, call Morocco. So that's to establish trade and commerce on a land that's not yours. Book reference. The Moors formed an alliance against Spain with England, France, and the Netherlands during the 15, 16, and 1700s. The tribute treaties between the Moroccan Empire and England protected English colonies from Moorish attacks. England had paid annual tributes to Morocco for the protection of her ships. Until the Declaration of Independence, English colonies in Morocco/America were no longer protected under tribute treaties with Morocco. The establishment of diplomatic relations between Moroccan Empire and England during the 1580s opened the doors to the formation of the English colonies along the Atlantic Sea coast in North America, beginning with the Virginian Commonwealth in 1607, which goes back to George Washington's letter in 1789, which has been acknowledged by both Bill Clinton and Barack Obama. See, they even put your history in cartoons to make it easier for you to digest.
Queen Henrietta Maria, from the book The Negro Rulers of Scotland and the British Isles. When they talk about the Moors, they went over to Europe and they helped civilize the Europeans. When you hear the word European, you automatically go to a Caucasian. Tricks are for kids. Don't go for that trick. Don't go for the little carrot they trying to throw at you and be like, yeah, when the Moors went over there to Europe, they went over there to help the white man.
Stop the cap.
Okay. They're not the white man. The Caucasian pale skin is not the white man. See, if you picked up a Henry Campbell 4th edition Black's Law Dictionary, it'll tell you right there. Free white person does not mean Caucasian race. The Moors over here in the Americas is the jump off. This is the starting spot. This is the land that rolls out of the water first. The Americas, Lemuria, and the land of Mu over here in the Americas. That's where civilization kicked off first. When the planet broke off from Gondwana land in Pangaea, etc., different factions separated. So since they separated, others needed more help. The Moors over here in the Americas, we had full motion over here. We gonna go over there because we headquarters. And we gonna help our brothers and sisters over there in Europe.
(1324), while on a pilgrimage to the Holy Kaaba, he stopped in Egypt and told this historian about his brother Abu Bakr II. Abu Bakr II was a very interesting person. He rejected his right to the crown and handed it to his brother in 1311 so that he could discover new lands and take Allah's religion to these places. Of course, crossing the Atlantic Ocean was not an easy task. So Abu Bakr II summoned expert marine engineers from all over the Arab world. He put the ships that these engineers built through numerous durability tests, and at last a ship worthy of the task was built. Then one morning, 200 ships carrying 2 years' supply of provisions, 200 years before Christopher Columbus set sail for America. And we're talking about Muslim African people here. And it's so interesting that Columbus himself has written that African people lived in America. He continues to note that the Indians knew how to melt gold and combine it with other metals, and that they did this using a method known as the African method. It is well known that the Mali Empire was famous for its gold and other treasures, so it was no coincidence that the Indians used the African method. As a matter of fact, the BBC has mentioned this topic on its website. And even today, there are still people who speak and write in the Mali Empire's language. In 1564, the French produced a map of Florida. If you look carefully, you can see that there are places named after cities in Morocco and Andalusia. This tells us that there were Muslims that had migrated and settled there. In a book written by the Harvard University professor Leo Weiner in 1920, it is stated that based on certain events and evidence, Christopher Columbus was certainly aware of a Muslim population living in America. Let's look at an entry from Columbus's diary dated 1493. These people's clothing resembles that of the Muslims of Granada. He also mentions that he saw a mosque in Cuba. These sentences clearly show us that Muslims were present. In the year 2000 in Spain, the Duchess of Medina Sidonia. During the palace's restoration, Duchess Luisa de Toledo found documents written in Arabic and dated back to the Andalusian period. These documents described America precisely and proved that Muslims were there before Columbus arrived. Her family, who came from the Andalusian elite, had preserved these documents for years. She was worried that the Spanish might destroy these documents, so she gathered them and published them in a book. In this book, titled Africa versus America, she portrays all the details that prove that Muslims were present before Columbus arrived. In fact, the BBC interviewed Luisa Isabel in 2001. Now let's look at the proof. Who really did discover America? Whose name should be recorded in the history books? And how can you prove such a discovery? In 1929, a map was found in Turkey which astonished thousands of people, including those at NASA. Some scientists question whether it was even produced by a human.
Look up Barbary treaties and understand what's really going on with the peace and friendship treaties. What was really going on in the Barbary treaties? You gotta understand, these were treaties between the United States of America and Morocco, Tunis, Algiers, Tripoli, and that's when the peace and friendship treaty comes into effect as well, around the same time. Well, what was going on? Why was the United States begging for a treaty? Why they need peace and friendship? Well, because when Morocco was seizing their ports and their ships, It was breaking them. They didn't have money. They weren't bringing in any fun. And what was on those ships was slaves. But they want you to think they was melanated slaves. I don't want to hear another melanated person talking about they are descendant of the slave. Unless you mix with Albion, you gotta understand what the term slave means. The original slaves were Albion people. They were not melanated.
Before there was an America, there was a tribe of black warriors in the South. They were the Yamasee. And in 1715, they didn't negotiate with colonizers. They declared war. They fought the British in one of the bloodiest rebellions ever seen on U.S. soil. But after the war, they were erased, reclassified, disappeared from books. Yet their blood still runs through South Carolina, Georgia, the Gullah, and FBA legacy. They didn't kneel. They didn't vanish. They became us, black, indigenous, unforgiven.
Okay, because so many people want to act like they don't know what's going on and they're so confused, I will explain to you how the FBA movement and the Hebrew Campulite movements are both hijacks. They're both hijacks of the two sticks coming together. America is filled with 12 tribes. Judah and Joseph, the prophecy is the stick coming together and the children of Israel waking up and remembering who they are in the land of their captivity and getting their land, their identity, their sources of wealth, their resources, their gold, everything back to them. And all the nations of the world, we are told, work together to make sure this doesn't happen because, well, they don't like you, Black Adam. They don't like the black man on top. They don't like the children of Israel. They don't like God having a chosen people because they're not the chosen people. So let's break this down, and I'm going to cover exactly right now how Hebrew Campulites, I call them not Hebrew Israelites, they're Hebrew Campulites. Are you a Hebrew Israelite? Are you a Campulite? And then there's the FBA movement, and how both of these are a combination of these two movements that have been going on, the stick of Joseph and the stick of Judah awakening and coming together. And both of these are the result of those movements coming together, just like Black Lives Matter was a desperate first attempt by them. It failed, so now they have Hebrew Campulites who they're working through, and they have FBA who they're working through. I'm going to show you how they're both hijacks of these two movements. So you have Black Americans claim to be two groups of people, Jews and indigenous Americans. Now, down here, we have the hijacks. We have the $5 Indians, the Mormons, the Islams, the Catholic, fake Jews, Christians. They all work together to hide these two identity. They have stolen their identity. They've split them up amongst themselves. The stick of Joseph are now the $5 Indians. Lucifer gave them their title. Judah now went to the Khazars. Jews, the fake Jews, now have Judah's title. And then everyone in between there and all the lands and all their history in between has been split up and given to these guys and given to other people. And a bunch of people are running around with their identities. So the whole point of the prophecy is that their goal is to make sure that these two, Joseph and Judah, the two sticks that are in punishment in their 400-year prophecies together in the Americas, never regain their identity. So the 400-year prophecy ended 2019. All of a sudden, black people awaken right out of nowhere. They start. They've been saying they've been saying they're Jews. They've been saying that they're American Indians. But you've been able to ignore them. You've been able to tell them that they're stupid. They don't know what they're talking about. Shut up, black man. You're black. You're nothing. You're African. You're stupid. You don't have a history. You don't have any accomplishments. You're nothing, and you'll never be anything. And you're not even in the Bible. And God doesn't even like you. And you're 3/5 of a man. That's what they were able to tell you during the 400-year punishment. You were on the bottom, as it said. Now, all of a sudden, you awaken. Imagine you stealing somebody's identity, stealing somebody's house, stealing somebody's property, and burying them in the backyard. All of a sudden, years later, you go and you look in that place you buried that homeowner, and the grave has been busted open and the body is missing. And there's a note saying, "I'm coming for you," on the door. These are what all these people down here are now scared of. And it's now their job to come and now start to create hijack groups to make sure these two stop in their progress. So, for the Jews, they created the Hebrew Campulites. The Hebrew Campulites are wrong because what do they push? They push the 12 tribes chart. The 12 tribes chart points to the $5 Indians as being the real people of the book. It's so funny. the camps know that the American Indians in places like Haiti and Cuba and the islands are filled with Jews, are filled with the Shemitic descendants, Shemitic Hebrew descendants. But it's so funny, they tell you that the white, pale-skinned people that call themselves that country are those people. So the Hebrew Campulite that's in charge of making sure Judah's progress is tracked and we know what he's learning and we're guarding him, they tell Judah that the $5 Indians are the real Indians and are his real brothers and sisters, and they need to listen to them. And they push the $5 out, they push the out of Africa theory onto Judah as well. Joseph, the indigenous American community that's been waking up to keep them from coming together, they push the FBA thing. Oh, you black people have been saying for years and years and years that you're Indians, that you're indigenous to the Americas, and you're not from Africa. We know that, but you haven't been able to prove it, and you haven't been putting it to the fire. You haven't been holding it to where it should be, and you've been letting the conversation die down. Thank God you haven't pushed it, but now you're pushing it, and you don't want to stop talking about it. So fine, we'll admit that you're American. Fine, we'll admit that you've been here longer than majority of white people and the majority of other nations. Fine, we'll even admit that some of you were here before your Columbus, but we're going to make sure we're not going to ever drop the out of Africa theory. If we tell you that black people, yeah, we admit that black people were in America here, we're talking to Joseph here, we're talking to the FBA movement here. Okay, black man, we'll admit that you were in America before us. We'll even admit that you were in America before Columbus. But what we're not going to do is we're not going to separate you from Africa. We're still going to say somehow you got shipwrecked or marooned here from Africa. And we're going to continue to push the out of Africa theory on you, that all black people come from Africa, which comes from the theory of evolution, which comes from no God. They want to either tie it back to evolution, tie it back to the out of Africa theory, which automatically ties it back to the godless theory of evolution. And essentially, it's their job, all these people down here, FBA, the Hebrew Campulites movement, the $5 Indians, the Mormons who have taken Joseph's identity, Islam who's taken some of the Jews' identity, fake Jews taking the Jews' identity, Christians taking the Jews' identity. It's their job to make sure these two sticks never come together and to keep the prophecy from never happening. Do you get it? That's why the FBA movement started and is now trying to separate the Caribbean. I was just reading a book on the Jews of Jamaica, on Cuba, on the Taino Indians and the Arawak Indians. If you try to claim as an FBA, there's a reason why FBA is going so hard in the paint and trying to separate the Caribbean, separate the Islanders, separate Jamaica, separate Haiti, separate the island of Hispaniola, where Columbus landed and said, I've arrived in paradise, I've arrived in the chosen land, I've arrived in the promised land. The Caribbean and its people are that. How can you say that somebody from Jamaica is not a foundational black American when the islands were not even that long ago considered to be part of Florida, considered to be part of the South? The whole peninsula, the whole Yucatan Peninsula at one point in time was looking to be considered yours. And according to the stick of Joseph, America is yours. Not only does America belong to Shem, both of these are Shemites. Let's write that right there. Shem, S-H-E-M. Shem owns the Americas. Shem is the progenitor of the American, or the people of the Americas. So that means it doesn't matter Judah or Joseph. America is still theirs because they are Shemites, and Shem was given America after the flood. So this is why they created the FBA movement. This is why they create the Black Lives Matter movement. This is why they create the Hebrew Campulite movement and push that 12 tribe charts, the charts that tell you that 5 pale white Indians are your tribesmates. This is why they push the FBA movement that tries to separate the Caribbean and tries to tell you to sit around and argue with Africans all day and argue with Hamites all day and argue with white people all day. Both these groups have been set up to deter these two from coming together and fulfilling prophecy.